Okay, hello. So today we're going to be talking about the age of European exploration from about 1400 CE to 1700 CE. And the first thing that we have to talk about is, why did Europeans actually explore outside Europe? So the Renaissance really fueled this. Questioning and the adventurous spirit of the Renaissance was really behind this. The Renaissance values of skepticism and humanism, just asking about the world around them and focusing on the individual experience on this earth, was something that was really powerful. And also, kings wanted more power too, as this cartoon shows as well. And they were hungry to really go make a name for themselves and to make some money as well. So the other thing that was really a big motivator for European explorers was the search for a better route to get cheaper spices from Asia. Because as anybody knows, you are always looking for a bargain and a good deal. When it came to Europe at this time, they really did want spices from India and from China. And anybody who knows anything about food and cooking, you have to make sure you're putting your salt, pepper, and your garlic on something to make it taste good. Especially black pepper, that was the big thing for Europeans at this time. We also have cumin, nutmeg, cloves, star anise, dill, coriander, turmeric, ginger, cinnamon, mustard. Those are all really even favorite spices today that people love to put on their foods, and that's really what Europeans were looking for at this point. So up to this point in history, we have seen that, as you can see here from this map, you don't have to write it, but we have seen that these spices were coming to Europe from the Silk Road, which you learned about way back in September. So through various overland trade routes and also through maritime trade routes, that's how it's getting to Europe. But the problem with that is that every time the commodity or the item is traded, the price goes up, right? So if you have just something coming from a factory or one place, say China, and you have that spice being transported by one person, then there's not going to be that much of a cost at the end of the line. However, let me go back. If you have it coming from China and then one person is transporting it and selling it to another person who then transports it, every time that commodity changes hands, the price is going to go up. So Muslims and Italians and Chinese merchants controlled trade between Asia and Europe, and basically the rest of Europe kind of wanted in on the game. So each time goods pass from one trader to another, the price increases, and Europeans wanted to find out a way to cut out the middlemen. It's just like buying, wholesale instead of retail. You're just looking for a better price, and spices were expensive, and that's what they wanted. So really, the motivation for exploration was economic. Another thing that helped is that we had improved technology that the Europeans had kind of caught up on to the rest of the world from the Middle Ages, and that helped explorers to navigate better. So as you can see over here, you have your classic compass, which we know the ancient Chinese, they invented, but now we're going to see Europeans learn better methods of cartography, which is map making. So a cartographer is a map maker. And I would love for my son to, for this to be me and this to be my son someday. He can't come to the phone, he's in the middle of Belgium. Okay, that's me being a geeky geographer lover. So I would love for that to happen. Here are just some different maps of the world at this time from the European perspective. Obviously you can see some gods and goddesses here and different images of people controlling the winds and things of that nature. Here's a Genoese map of the world from 1450. Not incredibly accurate, honestly. You can kind of see the Italian boot over here and the Iberian Peninsula. This is their idea of Africa. Oopsie daisy. And this is actually a Chinese map, which looks definitely more accurate, from 1418. This is a copy of it. But still, Zheng He was obviously, better at cartography than the Europeans at this time. The other thing that made a big difference was the astrolabe. This was an instrument that we see used in ancient Greece, but the Arabs really kind of perfected it because they were really good at being able to navigate along the seas and using this technology, which they then taught to the Europeans. So this was an instrument that determined latitude at sea. It has two sides to it, and as you can see here, there's actually like a grid on the pattern here, and it kind of is like a small scale model of the night sky. And then you have this piece over top of it, which is called the reed, and you can kind of align that to where you see the North Star, and then you can use this to basically find out what your latitude is. And then on the other side, you can calculate your time and also your distance and how fast you're moving. So it's a really useful instrument for navigation. And then you also have the caravel, which was an Arab ship design. Ooh, let me go back. Sorry. That had more masts and had square and triangular sails, so you were able to actually catch the wind much more easily, and also you're able to still keep moving even if there was no wind. So this increased speed and maneuverability as well. So this is a really important boat design that the Portuguese learned from Muslim merchants as well, which is the perfect example of my favorite thing in the whole entire world, cultural diffusion. So you don't have to write this, but the doldrums at certain latitudes were winds where winds were blowing apart, creating an area of a lack of wind. So slaves would row to the beat of a drum, thus it was called the doldrums. Just kind of a nice bit of trivia there. The horse latitudes is where the winds were meeting together, and there was a lack of wind there too, so ships would throw horses off of the ships to actually lighten the load. Poor horses. Unfortunately, sometimes this happened to slaves too. Okay, not very good either. And of course, you can't forget, as a motivating factor, Christian missionaries wanted to go and Christianize the rest of the world too and spread their religion. So because of Gutenberg's printing press, a lot of these explorers were able to share what their experiences were like, and then other missionaries wanted to hop on those boats and go evangelize natives as well, and expand the Christian world, or Christendom. So here are some of your explorers. First we have Henry the Navigator. He was a Prince of Portugal. He was kind of like Lorenzo Medici in a way, like the Renaissance in Italy, but he was Portuguese. And he was really into cartography. He was he brought people together in Portugal to study shipbuilding and map making and navigation, and he was kind of, a patron of this whole area in a way. So here's Portugal, as you can see from my blinking red arrow there. That didn't blink. Why aren't you blinking, red arrow? Try that again. There we go. Now it's blinking. So there you can see Portugal. In case you didn't know where it was, it's right on the Iberian Peninsula next to Spain. And, not very well-known country, very similar in culture to Spain, but a little bit different. You also have Bartolomeo Diaz. Sometimes you'll see it spelled with a D-I-A-Z. No big deal, kind of lost in translation. 1488, he was Portuguese as well. He rounded the Cape of Good Hope, which is on the southern tip of Africa. This is kind of a big accomplishment for Europeans because they hadn't gone this far to date. And it was also very dangerous. So the Cape of Good Hope was very dangerous because the cold water from the Arctic was merging with the warm water and air from the Atlantic, and this definitely causes dangerous storms. And this is the same thing that happens down at the bottom tip of South America as well. So these two passages at the bottom tip of Africa and South America are pretty dangerous for sailors. Oh, I just said that. Okay, there you go. So on to India. We have Vasco da Gama, 1498. He was Portuguese, and he actually went around Africa to get to India. This was pretty huge for Portugal because now they actually were able to establish a spice trade network of cities you could see here. So here's Gao, here's Calcutta, you have Mombasa, Mozambique, Malindi, and even, these cities here in Eastern Africa are still, pretty prominent today. And they had been there already. Muslim traders have been trading in these cities and around these waters for the last couple hundred years. So this was nothing new for them. They were just now seeing Europeans being able to set up these trade routes too. So it took about 10 months to reach India. And Vasco da Gama, the Portuguese, lost half of their ships. Many sailors died of scurvy, a disease caused by a lack of vitamin C. So as we all know, vitamin C comes from citrus fruits like lemons and limes and oranges. So that's why when you're sick, you're supposed to drink orange juice. So they had limes on board, which don't spoil quickly, and that's why sailors were called limeys. So if you've ever heard that in any pirate movies that you've ever watched, that's why. So the Portuguese established an all-route water route, trade route to Asia, and now they could get their beloved spices so that they could really spice up their lives in terms of food. You'll notice on this PowerPoint too, there's a lot of things that you don't have to write, so just please make sure that you're paying attention to the don't write on each slide so that you're not writing more than you have to, because there's actually a lot less that you have to write than those slides that are actually here. So this really brings in like catapults the Portuguese into kind of global wealth, and of course the other European countries are like, all right, we definitely need to get in on this action. So we have Vasco Nunez Balboa, not Rocky Balboa from the Rocky movies. He hacked through the Panamanian jungles to discover America, the Pacific Ocean, I should say, in 1513. He went on 4 voyages in different routes, but you can see here from this third voyage, this is where he went across Panama, the Isthmus of Panama, really thin strip of land there. You should have learned about that in junior high school. And he was the first European to see the Pacific Ocean from that side. So that's kind of why he gets credit for that. And he settled there as well. In his different voyages, he did go in here to Colombia. And if you follow this link down here at the bottom, there's actually a really good website that shows you, where he went on his different voyages as well. So it's kind of a cool thing you could check out. Now we get to Christopher Columbus. He was Italian, he was Genoese, but he was financed by Spain, by Queen Isabella and King Ferdinand. They had just pretty much gotten Spain together as a country through their marriage, and they also fought against Muslims in Spain too, to try and make Spain completely Catholic again, and they were pretty successful at it. This is where you get the Inquisition and lots of torture to Muslims and Jews and anyone that they didn't think that was Christian. So Columbus thought that he could find a sea route to Asia by sailing the other way, basically, across the Atlantic Ocean. And at this point, we did know that the Earth was not flat. That's kind of a myth. But he didn't exactly know how big the Earth actually was. So he was pretty much way off on that. But he was, you got to give the dude some credit for kind of doing this at all. So Columbus loaded up the Nina, the Pinta, and the Santa Maria and took off for Asia on August 3rd, 1492. And he thought he had successfully reached the East Indies, so he called the inhabitants Los Indios. And this translates into Indian, and that's where you get, Native Americans called Indians. And then you have Amerigo Vespucci. He was Italian. He wrote about a book about the New World, and this really sparked more European exploration into the New World, and that's why America is named after him.